Let's face it, data is at the heart of everything we build. If you're creating a demo or an MVP of an application in Java, you'll need some data to get it off the ground. Maybe you have some already, but maybe you don't. In today's tutorial, I'm going to introduce you to Java Faker, a cool project to generate sample data for your next application. What's up, friends? My name is Dan Vega, and I love to take what I've learned and teach it to you. If you want to learn more about me or find more content like this, head over to my website at danvega.dev. And with that, let's get on to today's topic. Okay, so here we are on GitHub at Java Faker. This is a library. It's a port of a Ruby's Faker gem, and it generates fake data. And I've used something similar to this in JavaScript as well. You'll probably find them for most languages. But what it lets us do is we can include this dependency, we can create this Faker object, and then we can get data. So instead of just inserting some random string like first name 1 through 1000, right, we get some actual like names. And then there's a whole bunch of data we could fake out. And this really helps us if we're trying to build an application and let's say we wanted to throw a data grid on the page and be able to sort and page and things like that, search through things, that this kind of real fake data would help in that scenario. So what we're going to do today is we're going to create a Spring Boot app, and I'm going to include this dependency, and we're going to use it. Now, if you're not using Spring, don't worry. If you look in the description below, there's a link to the application that we're going to build, and then another one that I built just for you that is just straight JDBC. So if you don't need to include Spring, you don't have to. You can use this in any Java project. And that other repository was just kind of to point that out. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to IntelliJ and create a new project. All right, so here we are in IntelliJ. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. And we're going to use the Spring Initializer here, and we're going to call this Java Faker. And let's go ahead and throw this in a different directory. We're going to use Java Maven. And I'm going to use Java 17. Where's Java 17? And we'll click next. And all we're going to need here is web. So we're going to pull down web. And we're going to use, let's look at JPA. And we're also going to grab H2. And that should be all we need. So we're going to build a web application, and it's going to have Spring Data JPA and an H2 database. So we'll go ahead and click finish. We'll let IntelliJ run here and load up the project. And I'll just kind of start talking about what we're going to build. It's just a very simple application. We're going to have a couple entities in there, one for person and one for address. So really that's where I want to start. Again, I mentioned this at the top of the tutorial. Everything that we do these days is really data centric, right? And this is no different. So this application starts with the data. We're going to start with going ahead and creating these entities. So here under Java Faker, I'm going to go ahead and, so we have dev, Dan Vega, Java Faker. I'm going to create a new package, and we're going to call this, okay, so 1 second here. We have IntelliJ loading up some dependencies. All right, so we should be able to create a new package, and we're going to call this model. And what I'm going to do in here is create a new class called person. And we're going to mark this as an entity. And let's just go ahead and create some fields in here. So I'm going to create a private int ID, a private string first name. So I'm just creating some properties of what a person might have. So we should have a data type here, Dan. We're going to have let's do a phone number. Let's do an email. Let's get rid of this. So what else do we need? Oh, I also want to do an address. So I'm going to say private address. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to create a noarg constructor here. I'm also going to create a constructor that takes in everything but that. And what we need now is we need to mark the ID. So I'm going to say ID at generated value, and that should satisfy everything there. We'll need to fix that address, but we'll do that in a second here. So, okay, so far so good. I think all I need now is to generate some getters and setters. And let's go ahead and generate a toString. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create this address. Oh, why did I do that? Wrong one. Let's go ahead and why did I pull in that? Let's go ahead, try that again. We are going to create a class called address. And this is going to contain, so we're going to mark this with @entity. And I'm going to go ahead and save us some time here. I have my address entity. Go ahead and drop that in. That should give us everything. We just have an ID, address, city, state, and zip. Nothing special going on here. We got to pull these in. All right, so that satisfies that. Now we have one more problem here. We need to kind of relate an address, so the person to an address. And the way that we're going to do that here is we're going to use a one-to-one. So one person has one address. I know we could do like a one-to-many if we had if we were in an inventory or a shipping system and we had a shipping address and a billing address. But for the sake of simplicity in a demo, we're just going to do a one-to-one here. So I want to set that to cascade, cascade type all. And I'm also going to set the join column here, which just says, hey, I want you to create a column called address underscore ID, and it's going to reference the column ID. Okay, so no errors. I think we are good there. So really the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and create a repository. So the repository is going to give us all of the abilities to just do some CRUD on the database. So we can quickly insert, update, delete, and list all of the items in our database. So let's create a new package here. We're going to call this repository. And in here, we're going to create a new class called person repository. Come on, spell Dan. And I don't know why this model is not in here. Let's refactor that. I don't know what happened there. So we have a person repository. And all that's going to do is extend the CRUD repository. So it is of type person. And there it is. And the data type for the ID is an integer. So we'll say integer. Public, not a class. It is an interface, and that should fix that for us. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do is we want to take a look at Java Faker. So the first thing that I want to do is let's head back over to the website. And you'll see here that we have this dependency. So we're going to pull in this dependency in our POM. So let's head back over here, open that up, and we're just going to add this as a dependency. Go ahead and refresh Maven to pull that dependency down, and then that will bring that into our project. So the next thing we want to do is be able to use that faker. So what I'm going to do is actually create a class that we can use to basically insert some data. So the way that we're going to do that is right here in the root, we'll just create a new class called sample data loader. And this is going to be a component. So it gets picked up by Spring. And we're going to implement the command line runner. And what that'll do is allow us to just have something run when the application starts up. So this is a interface, the command line runner. So we'll need to implement a method here called run. And here is where we can load our data. Now, before we do that, we're going to need a couple things though, right? We're going to need the person repository that we just created. So I'm going to say private final person repository. And we're going to go ahead and add that as a constructor parameter. So this will get auto-wired in by Spring. You can see that it's picked it up. And then the next thing we'll need is a faker. So we pulled into the dependency. All we need to do is create a new object of type faker, and we'll call it faker. And the same thing here, we'll just go ahead and yeah, we want to add that. Let's just do this here. Oh, you know what? I don't want to do that here. That is not coming in as a bean. We will actually come back to that and turn that into a bean so that we can use it elsewhere in our application. But for now, let's just go ahead and do this. This is a no-no. We know that. We'll talk about why this is a no-no in a second. But let's just run with this for now. So now what we want to do is we want to insert 100 records into our database. So we have a nice solid set of data to work with. So to do so, we'll start with creating a list of persons. We'll call this people. And we're going to use well, let's just back up here, import. So we're going to start here with an int stream. So this will allow us to loop over a range. So we're going to say range closed of 1 to 100. And before we do that, we're going to actually map to object. So we're going to loop over from 1 to 100, and we're going to map this to an object. So we're going to say for each one, I want you to go ahead and create a new person. And then, so in the new person, we'll actually end up collecting this back into a list. So here's where we're going to basically create a new person. So now a new person, you can see we take in a first name, last name, phone number, email, and then an address. So what we want to do now here is use that faker object to fake that data. So I'm going to call faker.name. So this is where looking at the API will give you some ideas of what is possible. So I've kind of gone through this already. I've looked at the docs, but you'll want to go through and look at the API and see what's possible, because it's not always just like a name is not just a name. A name has a bunch of methods underneath it that you can get. So if we look at name, we can say, okay, I just want to get a first name, but you can also do things like full name, name with middle. There's a whole bunch of other methods available. But right now, all we care about is a first name. So we're going to use first name. Next, we want a last name. So we're going to say last name. Then we need a phone number. So there's actually a phone number. Now again, phone number, we need something underneath that. There's a phone number, a cell number. I'm just going to grab a cell number. Next, we need a email address. So there is an internet method here that has a bunch of methods underneath it to get things that you might find on the internet, like an email address, like an avatar, a whole bunch of different things. So I'm going to go ahead and grab email address. And now finally, we need a address. So I'm going to say new address, and we have a constructor for an address that takes in a street address, city, state, and zip. So again, I'm going to reach out to faker. I'm going to call address, and we're going to go ahead and get street address, city, state, and zip. Okay, so that should give us everything we need. Now, again, we've collected that into a list. And so at this point, we should be able to use our person repository. And the person repository has a save all that takes an iterable of type S. And these are basically entities that we can save. So we're going to call save all. And we'll pass in people. And so now what we should be doing here is looping over this, creating 100 people, storing that in a list with the variable name people, and then we can take people, pass it to our person repository, and persist that to a database. See if that worked. We're going to go over to our Faker application, and we'll go ahead and hit run. And then if this starts up okay, what we'll do is, actually we need to fix something. This is going to run okay, hopefully. But we do need to fix something. We need to add a couple properties to our application.properties. So first thing is we need our H2 console. So I want to go ahead and enable that. I also want to say generate a unique name for the data source, which is false. For the data source name, I want to call this people. So with that, we should be able to rerun this and head over to localhost 8080/H2 console. We're going to connect and we see our person table and our address table. If we go ahead and select all from persons, we can see that we do indeed have 100 records in here. And again, you can see we have some like valid data to work with now. We have email addresses, first and last name, a phone number. We have a pointer to an address. If we go over here and click on address, we can see that we have some valid addresses and some valid states here. So we have some real data to work with, which is really exciting. And we really didn't do much to make this happen, right? And here in our sample data loader, we just use that Faker object to go ahead and create that data. So now I did want to show one more thing. Don't like using new in any constructors because then this becomes harder to mock, right? So we want to go ahead and replace this with an actual bean, because what if we wanted to use this somewhere else, this Faker object? So what I'm going to do is actually come up and create a new package, and we'll call this config. And let's just have a class called web config. And what we'll do is make this a configuration class. And what we'll do is we'll come in here, we'll have @bean, and we'll say Faker, return new Faker. So nothing special going on, but now what we can do here is we can add a constructor parameter for this, and Spring will wire this in for us. So I'm not going to go back to the H2 console, but as long as we go ahead and rerun this, everything should look normal. Great. All right, and if you just wanted to add one more little touch on this application, we can go ahead and create a controller. We'll call this a person controller, and we'll make this a REST controller. We'll have a request mapping of /API/people. And here what we'll do is we'll get an instance to our person repositories. So we'll say private final person repository. We will add a constructor parameter for that. And what we'll do is we'll create a simple get mapping to go ahead and get a list of all of the people. So we'll say public list of people and find well, we need person, not people. Okay, so I think that is going to give us most of what we need. Find all actually returns an iterable. We can fix that by just changing that. And if we go ahead and restart this, I'll hop over to the browser again. And here in the browser, we'll go to /API/people. And here will be our 100 records. So I just want to show one more example. The reason I created this controller is because, again, when you are working with sample data, working in your application, you want to be able to test it with some real data, right? Like not person one, first name one, first name two, et cetera. So what I want to do here in this application is I have this repository, right? So here in the repository, I may want to go ahead. Did I not open that? So person repository. I might want to try and test out a method that I want to create. So here in the repository, I may want to create something like that will return a person, and we'll call this find by first name equals and last name equals, and then we can go ahead and take in a first and a last, right? So now I have this method that I created that will hopefully return me a person by their first name and their last name. So back in the person controller, we'll say get mapping. We'll just say this is find by. We'll say public person find by first and last. And then what we'll do is we'll just take in a couple request parameters. We'll call this one first and request param string last. So now what we can do is we can use our person repository and use our new method and pass in first and last. So let's go ahead and rerun this. And then what we're going to do is hop back over to the browser, and we'll look in the H2 console first, see if we can find somebody by first and last name, and then we'll use our API to go ahead and test that out. All right, so I have a first name of Zach, a last name of Sanford. Let's go ahead and try to test that out. I'm going to test it right here in IntelliJ. And so localhost API people find by, we'll say first name, or first is equal to Zach and last is equal to Sanford. Let's see if we can go ahead and run this. And there we go, we get a record back. So we were able to kind of quickly prototype something out and work on, specific methods that we're trying to work on for our application. So again, I hope this was helpful. It's a really cool library called Java Faker, real easy to use. And anytime you need some sample data, whether you're building a demo or you're building an MVP of an application, it's nice to have some real useful sample data. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. And until next time, happy coding, friends.